Here we have the OPXY, and I wanted to give my take on it 3 months later, and just how it generally fits or doesn't fit into my entire workflow. With some hands-on examples, of course. The notion of the price is not even going to be a discussion in this video. I've actually done a related video in terms of price right here, just comparing it to other units or multiple units that you could buy for the same price as the OPXY. So check that video out. If you do end up wanting to buy one, consider using the affiliate link in the description of this video. I would make a small commission from that sale at no extra charge to you. It's just a great way of supporting this channel. I also have a Patreon community where I regularly post extended videos, exclusive videos. So go check that out, also linked in the description of this video. So let's break down what I like versus what I don't like about the OPXY. What I like is, of course, the portability to functionality ratio. There is so much packed into such a tiny little space. It's without a doubt the most convenient sequencer, synth, sampler, groove box that I personally own. Of course, it's pretty much like the exact same size as the OP1, but that's sort of a different thing, right? It's worth mentioning that I also used to own the OPZ, which is actually even smaller than this, and it's very, very similar for a much lower price. If you work it properly, I believe that you could make the OPXY work pretty much with any genre that you'd like, just with all the different synth engines that it offers you. Not to mention that, of course, you could sample with it as well, which is obviously a great way to, throw yourself into a specific genre. And I have found a sweet spot between the wavetable engine. As you can see here, I'm using, multiple wavetables on the same track. So that would be sounds like this. Let me just mute a few of these. So it's covering the bass. So that's all really simple. I've also combined just a kick one shot in this case. And this kick is from the stock sounds on the OPXY. Of course, you could upload your own one shots if you'd like. You could, of course, include longer samples as well. So in this case, I've included samples from Techno Starters Volume 1, which is my latest sample pack. Sometimes dropping a sample that's really meant to be in that genre will help get you there. In comparison to something like an Elektron sequencer, which is, at the top of the game in terms of sequencers, I would say that the OPXY sequencer is maybe at 50% capacity of an Elektron sequencer in terms of step precision, just in terms of how many parameters you actually have as an option to param lock. So if I go back to my synth page, things like filter. If I go back to my mixer page, I'll play this again. And so let's say on the hi-hat part, let's give this a ton of delay. So this is something that could also be param locked if you'd like. Same thing with reverb. You can param lock this on specific steps. Going back to the synth page, you could also param lock ADSR if you'd like. And then down here, you have these very unique and specific trig parameters. I'm going to perform in something here. Okay, so let's say that's our thing. I'm going to go to this note specifically and double it. So this is sort of like a ratchet sort of thing. You're adding If I want to permutate this entire pattern, I could choose something else. So hold, let's say hold on this step for 2 steps. Here we go. So now everything has been permutated by a 16 note or a step after that pattern, after that step. Right, and the cool thing is that it gives you a description of everything. So pulse, repeat the step 4 times. Let's do that. These keys are velocity sensitive. That's a good and a bad thing because they're not super accurate in their velocity sensitivity, if you know what I mean. So if afterwards, if you want, you could choose all the notes and then choose the velocity that you want. Let's say, I don't know, everything to be 5. Right, so now everything is the same volume. I could choose, let's say this one, I'm going to skip. So now it's only going to play every second time. You could also param lock different parameters that the synth offers you. So let's say on this step, I want this sound. It shows you the sound as you're param locking. And let's say I want this one to be clean. Let's hear that. Unfortunately though, I noticed that as you param-lock more and more things on, every track, much like with the OPZ, things kind of start to get stuck, or you might lose parameters that you've added in previous tracks as you add more. I'm not sure what the limit is. And so this obviously becomes a problem, especially if you're producing in genres that are, sequencer heavy like techno or maybe even house music. Having that param lock power is super useful, and I would say vital in a way. So I'm not sure what the limit is, but I've reached that limit a few times. Whereas with something like an Elektron sequencer, I have never reached a limit of param locks. And there's also more things that you could param lock. So there's just even more precision with an Elektron sequencer. I could see that even just with the aesthetic of the OPXY, the color of it, that's the direction that they're pushing in a little bit. But again, it's just not quite as strong. I should also mention that with the OPZ, the whole param lock thing, it behaves in a very similar way as the OPXY. Your param locks over time will just start falling off basically. So what we have touched on just now are all of these synth tracks right here. If you hit this button, now you have another 8 tracks, some of which you're able to add triggers to as well. And I've experimented with this section of the OPXY on every single track that I've created thus far. So for example, the tape reel. I find that using this subtly, it works in a really interesting rhythmic sort of way. So this is a new pattern that I've just loaded. And each of these represent a loop of whatever is happening on that particular step in the pattern. So let's play it. And I could just throw these in there randomly, choose which ones I like. So it sort of reacts differently to, each channel or voice that I've added into this particular beat. And I like that. And I also really like to experiment with the brain, especially with a pattern that's kind of atonal in a way. It just changes the entire feel of the pattern. Phrygian is a mode that I think works really well with techno. Right, so all of a sudden we have a completely different flavor for this entire groove. Let's make this a 2-bar thing. Maybe the first half, or you know what, a 4-bar thing. The first half could be Phrygian. What else could we add here? We could play around with B Locrian and A minor. And also, if I want to bring this up the octave, this is an up the octave B Locrian or up the octave A minor, but I want to keep this down the octave definitely, or even down an octave. If you're working with something that's more tonal, it obviously reacts in a much more concrete way, let's say. I actually don't remember what I added here, but let's play it. Whereas, what was the initial pattern? Right, so I basically turned it into a completely different chord progression. The punch in effects page. First off, the animations are very cool, especially this one. Where is it? Where is it? The winking face. And this section here works especially well with my RMX 1000 that's off to the side here. This is an effects unit from Pioneer. I feel like it's still the best effects unit in the game. It's, I think, over 12 years old now. Again, you could lock these punch and effects in. So this is a note randomizer. This is down the octave. This is mute. So now we're just hearing the drums. We could mute the drums as well. Little fill. Right, so it's very simple, but it works, like I said, especially well with Okay, so those are a few things that I do really like about the OPXY. Next are a few things that I don't like about it. Before getting into that though, a word from today's sponsor, DistroKid. If you're watching this video, chances are that you'd like to officially release your music to all major streaming platforms. So first off, why choose DistroKid? They are hands down the most affordable music distribution platform in the game. We're talking just over 20 bucks a year affordable to release unlimited music. And by the way, on top of that, I also have a discount for you linked in the description of this video. You collect 100% of your streaming royalties with DistroKid, another huge plus, and they're designed specifically for independent artists and producers. How, you may ask? ask? Well, here's a list of tools that they offer that will help you with at least some of the heavy lifting when it comes to promoting your own music independently. For example, there's Hyperfollow, which is a free landing page that I've personally been using for years now across all of my social media. It's similar to a Linktree type of situation where you can lead people to specific pages or maybe different social medias. You can post video content, maybe a link to your latest single, and you can create an unlimited amount of landing pages at no extra cost. DistroKid also offers promo cards, another free tool that you could use to promote your music on social media. So many other features, and again, just over $20 a year. To me, it's a no-brainer if you're looking for a music distributor. Well, now you know where to go. Sign up using the discount linked in the description of this video. Let's get back to it. In the context of this video, you may be thinking that, yeah, the OPXY sounds good, you like the sound of it. That could partly be because I'm running it through Generation Loss, which is like a degradation, lo-fi, analog flavor effects pedal, although it is digital. It sounds really good on everything. I've added some saturation, some flutter, some wow. So it's like sort of a tape emulation sort of thing going on. So this is this particular groove with it on. I'm gonna turn it off now. I mean, it still sounds good. What I've found is that like it sounds really digital to me. And so I found that running it through a degradation pedal like this, it just gives it the grit that I need, that I'm looking for. If you want to, you could go into your mixer, page 3, I think it is. Yeah, and so you could, clip it a little bit. Mixer, maybe get a bit of clipping action going on. Pull down the saturation here. But ultimately here is where I think the action comes from. Audio exporting is another thing. They sort of took a step back on this one. With the OP1 Field, you're at least able to export individual stems into your DAW, which is of course a great way to expand on your ideas. I don't think you're able to do that with the OPZ, and same thing with XY. So in terms of production, it keeps it into that like fun idea creation zone and not so much into something that you can develop further, or at least it sort of discourages you from doing that. You have to, solo each part in your track and then export that individually into your DAW. It's doable, but it's a bit of a pain. Obviously, I'm not an engineer, but hopefully the OPXY actually has the capability of doing that in the future, possibly with like a future update or something like that. Another thing I don't like, that actually doesn't really apply to me at this point because of the way that I've been using this machine, basically as just like a one or two bar looper techno sequencer. That sort of technique is a result of the type of music that I'm creating. But I have tried longer patterns with the OPXY. You could also create multiple patterns per channel or per voice. Just like with the param locks, I found that as you start to push the amount of patterns that you're using within any given project, the OPXY gets a little bit sticky and it starts to bug out a little bit. It just feels like it has a hard time keeping up when you start to really push it. Again, comparing it to the OPZ, I felt like it had the exact same issue when I started to push it in that same way. Goes without saying that I'm hoping that that's something that they're able to improve on. All in all, for the way that I'm using it, there's just something about the workflow of Teenage Engineering products. They tapped into like the fun factor. It is extremely fun creating beats with the OPXY. And because my approach has been very simple and I'm sort of taking a lot of weight off of the OPXY with other units, the OPXY has been full of some pleasant surprises. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully this video pointed you in the right direction. Thanks for being here and hopefully see you soon.